Hello and welcome everyone to yet another session of the PATIO Conversations. Thank you for coming along to these sessions month after month, and we're hopefully putting together an interesting group of speakers and discussions in relationship to the idea of the Indian Ocean Rim as a broader geography that we're exploring. So previously we kind of started with certain things that were regional, and then we were looking across the board from India into the eastern border of Africa. And then I think last time we also looked at certain cases in Southeast Asia. So this time what we're trying to do is we're trying to look at a broader geography where sort of India, of course, is in the center, but we're looking at patterns of exchange, particularly around migration, different forms of migration, as we will discuss today, looking at how Indians who moved to the Southeast Asian countries like Malaysia and Singapore, how do they engage with the impacts of migration? And on the other hand, a lot of people from Sri Lanka and Southwestern India who end up in the Middle East or in the Gulf recently, and how that affects things back home. So the broader focus area for today's discussion is migration, but looking at the peculiarities of remittances and the impact that has not only in the exchange of ideas across the borders, but also physical infrastructure like the buildings back home, and how these remittance houses then start changing the dynamic of the built environment, both at home and overseas. So we've got three wonderful speakers who are at different stages of their research work around this topic, and we will be able to have a robust discussion. I don't want to take too much time in the beginning because we've got to go through three discussions today and then hopefully have a reasonable amount of time left for question and answer. So I will just start inviting the first speaker. Of course, as usual, we will go with about 10-15 minutes of the presentation and then move on to the second and third before opening up to questions. So our first speakers today are actually Dr. Madhumathi and Zahra Yasmoon. Both Madhumathi and Zahra Yasmoon are based at the Vellore Institute of Technology, VIT, in Vellore. And Dr. Madhumathi is actually the director of the architecture school there. And both of them are working. I believe we'll hear a little bit more about their partners in Malaysia, particularly in the region of Malacca, where they're looking at the Chettiyar community from South India and their relationship to the migrant relationship to Malaysia itself. So with that quick introduction, I will invite both Madhumathi and Zahra to share the research that they have been doing. Thank you.
Yeah, good evening. Myself, Madhumathi. Basically, I'm a landscape architect, done my PhD in the sustainable architecture, and I worked more on the vernacular architecture, and that was the interest which triggered me to research into this topic. So we will be talking about myself and Professor Zahra. We will be talking about the living heritage, comparative analysis of the housing, rituals, and social practices of the Chettiyar community in India and their adaptation in Malaysia. So I will be talking about the Indian part, whereas Professor Zahra will cover the adaptation part in Malaysia. So with before you, there are three pictures. So the first picture shows about the Chettiyar community, their houses in India, and the rituals, the practices they do. And the second picture shows the migrant community, Tamil people as such who have migrated to Malaysia and living for ages there, but still with the same tradition deeply rooted of what is practiced in India. So certain spatial adaptation would have happened, but still the culture and the tradition they practice is still very deeply rooted. And the third picture, what you see is the adapted community, the Chettiyars who have married and people of other countries like Chinese, Philippines, and Malaysias. So they have a separate community called Chetti Malacca community. Still, the traditions what is followed in Tamil Nadu, it's followed, but with the adaptation of the country they have married. So with this introduction, we'll go into the topic, and you will be wondering when there are so many vernacular tribes here, why particularly Chettiyar. So this Chettiyar community, particularly they are known as Natakotai Chettiyars. Natakotai meaning it's forts. Okay, so they are known for building up of huge palatial mansions like forts, and they are also known as Nagarattas. Nagarattas meaning people who knows to design towns. So they are famous in planning their towns together, and they are exceptional. They have exceptional business acumen and financial powers. So they are called as the bankers of the East. So their financial expertise earned them their reputation with spreading across India, Burma, Malaysia, and Singapore. And their entrepreneurial spirit, they were the pioneers in establishing the trade routes and commercial networks across various regions, and resilience. So they have navigated the significant economic and political challenges which has happened in different countries, either in India or in Malaysia, even the wars and everything. They still withstood all that, and they're still very famous in money making. And the next other famous part about this Chettiyar community is the grand architectural heritage, the Chettiyar mansions. They have huge palatial homes, and the villages entirely is an example of how an environmental planning can be done at the village level. And this palatial homes still stand as an example for the climate responsive architecture here. And they also have one distinctive practice of unique blends of style. So though they practice the vernacular architecture of Tamil Nadu, so they also were able to bring in the tradition or the architectural detailing of whichever the country they interacted or whichever the country they traded with. So some of the elements and some of the materials they were bring into the regular architecture of what they did. The other famous thing about these palatial mansions is the functional design. So despite the grandeur, they tried to give the spatial appropriation for whatever the activities they did, and they are very famous for their daily routines, the rituals, their the cultural practices. So each space had a spatial appropriation for whatever the activities did. And when they migrated to the different countries, though the spatial dynamics changed, still they were able to practice the same rituals and practices they were doing. One other famous thing is about the distinctive Chettinad Kazan. You would have seen in many countries the hotels named as Chettinad itself. And then the other famous thing about these Chettiyar communities, the philanthropy and the cultural contribution. They have supported many institutions, either the institutions were established in India as well as in other parts of the world also. And they are famous for the preservation in heritage. So though they are the community who have been in existence to 200, 300 years, still they're deeply rooted with the culture and the tradition they follow. And they're also very famous for the craftsmanship. So they fostered the local crafts, as well as they have a unique practice of they making their own building materials, as well as bringing the materials from different countries. So this starts about the introduction of the community. So basically our aim is to examine how this migration and diaspora experience have dynamically shaped the preservation and transformation of Chettiyar cultural practice, comparing the community adaptations between their ancestral home in India and their established diaspora in Malaysia. So this study employs ethnographic fieldwork and archival research to understand the architectural adaptations, rituals, continuities, and social structure modification in transitional context. So we will start our study in this way. We'll be talking about their traditional housing, what is here in India and how it has been transformed in the Malaysian context. And we will be touching upon the rituals and practices. So the continuity, what is there in India and how it is still practiced in Malaysia, and evolution of religious and life cycle rituals. We'll also be talking about the cultural adaptations when they started this internationalization and they started interacting with the other community, how these adaptations happen. And finally, we'll also touch upon the resilience and dynamism of Chettiyar heritage. So these are the cultural dynamism, what they do it. So we'll be talking about the living heritage. The Chettiyar community itself, they are known for the living heritage since they practice the architecture, the tradition for over the ages, and still they're able to keep their community intact whether they are in India or wherever they travel. Then we'll be talking about the migration, that is the movement of people leading to the cultural exchange. Then the diaspora experience, shared experience of dispersed community. We'll also be touching upon the preservation, maintaining the cultural elements over time, and about the transformation. We'll also talk about the adaptations, adjustment to these practices, ritual continuities, and social structure. So a small introduction about the community. They are Natakota Chettiyars, a mercantile and banking community from Chettiyar region of Tamil Nadu. Historically significant maritime traders and financiers with networks along Southeast Asia. And they are known for the grand mansions with intricate woodwork, imported tiles, and vast courtyards. See, what you see behind is one mansion, but a village consists of hundreds of mansions. Still, it's in existence in India. And initially, there were 103 villages. The Chettiyar settled as 103 villages. Now it's because of the challenges in the conservation and preservation, the number of villages are becoming reduced, and still we have 78 such villages in Tamil Nadu. And there is a strong emphasis on the distinct cultural identity and elaborate wedding ceremonies and ancestor worship. Still, the people who are settled in other countries, they travel to India to celebrate the festivals together. And there is a unique blend of local customs and influences from international levels also. This is an introduction to the community. So this is about the Chettiyar community. They started their life from Poombuhar, which is this is the timeline. So they started their life as an early traders in Poombuhar, a coastal city. And due to the environmental disasters, they had to relocate, and they relocated in an inland region called Chettiyar, which is an arid, which is very cautiously selected because of the previous experiences of the tsunami. So when they settled as communities together, and they also had a clan system. So each clan the temple will be the center of their clan. And phase 3, they started the international trade and relations, especially with the Southeast Asia. And in the phase 4, which is in the 19th to 20th century, they started their cultural blending with new communities. They started marrying people from other countries. And phase 5 is the post-independence and modern era, where the diversification started happening and their global presence was felt everywhere. And to give an introduction of the Chettiyar community in India, we'll be talking about their town planning, their water management skill, their palatial mansions, rich cultural practice, sumptuous cuisine, business practices, organized banking, jewelry, and philanthropy. This is the way each village is planned. This was planned 200 years before. No, we'll be wondering, it's a proper grid iron planning, and you will see the temple as the center of the village. And it's direction based. The main they still had the main roads and service road. The community ponds was developed and then maintained by the villagers. Since they settled in an arid region, they wanted a sustainable living, so they started developing their own community ponds, and they had an integrated water management system. They strongly followed the principles of Vastu Shastra, and the entire city planning was based on the visibility, mobility, safety, familiarity, and the sustainability. So this is how you see the integrated. This is an example of the recent Google map. So though the expansion has happened, still the water management is being the core principles for the settlement pattern itself. And what you see in the first picture is the existing or the landscape. It's a very hot arid region with a very dry landscape. But then the water management is the core for either for the house planning or the city planning. So in the picture 2, you can see the roof architecture of how the courtyards are planned to collect the rainwater. And from the rainwater, from the courtyard, the water is directed either to the drains or through the surface runoff from the roads into the community ponds. So they had a different system of community ponds also. Mostly it is associated with the temple. So the basic reason is people will consider the water to be sacred, and they don't throw any dust into it or the garbage into it. And the second level is the larger level level pond called a Urani. This is again a surface water tank, and each village, they made it sure they will have at least 3 or 4 such water body. And the other one is the Aries, which is a very larger, and this is a natural pond, and they try to construct in an area where the low level is there. And you can see the example of how a community pond is done. It is associated with the temple itself. And these are the streets of Chettiyar. You can see how huge Palestinian mansions are planned together. And there is a high plinth which is being done. The basic reason for doing this in an arid region is because of the previous experience. Since they have struggled with tsunami, they had the fear and they started constructing with a higher level plinths. Still, you will see the same level of plinth in every village. And these are the examples of the different types of mansions. You will see a similar type of architectural detailing. They follow a uniformity in the buildings, but then still, if you look into the architecture very intricately, the details are varied between the countries they traded. Each owner will be doing trades with the different countries, so there will be still influences of that architecture in their house also. So these are again few examples of the other mansions. And this is the spatial layout of the house. So this starts from the entry. So this is that Munkattu, which is known for, which is only for the visitors. And next is for they have 3 different types of courtyards. The first courtyard is where all the marriage and ceremonies happen. And the second courtyard is only for the women. And the third courtyard is for the servants. They followed a distinct spatial appropriation for different people within the house. And this is the way the climate responsiveness is also followed in the house. So each house is planned with an east-west direction, addressing the wind direction of those villages. And the courtyards help them in the stack effect. And all the materials, what they use, see, though you see, so such a large houses, it's done completely without concrete and steel. It's all natural clay tiles and lime mortar, and all the woodworks that are done, which is all very insulative materials. And this is the roof architecture they have. As I mentioned, this is particularly to collect the rainwater, and they had different types of storage also. Some water will be immediately stored for their immediate use. And next is they have a well inside the house, as well as the water is directed to the main community pond for the annual storage. And these are the different types of courtyards, what I have mentioned about. So we have there are 3 courtyards, and the material treatment varies between where the courtyard is planned. If it is near the entry for the guests, then the detailing will be different, whereas the utilitarian and the other courtyards have a different type of detailing. And these are the other detailing you can find. This is mostly towards the entry, and mainly lot of teak is used because of their association with Burma being the main trading country. So they brought the teak from Burma, and they started building their houses here. And these are the detailing, again, a very intricate detailing. And you can see some of the details here. Those houses which had the owners who had links with the British were allowed to use those type of detailing in the houses. And these are the natural materials that have been used in the houses. One is the eggshell plaster. This is a very unique detail. What you see in the wall, this is a handmade plaster, which is done with eggshells and other natural materials. And it gives a very glossy appearance, and it stays even for 150 years. You don't have to repaint it again. And next is the Attangudi tiles, what you see in the flooring. This is a handmade tile which can be done in a different pattern. Again, these tiles are done with lime mortar, and the design is being done locally. Still, the same practice is followed. And next is the usage of teak wood extensively, since it's a hot arid region, to address the climate, there will be usage of more timber. Next is the wood and stone sourced locally. To address the vernacular architecture, they use mainly the materials available in the nearby region only. The plinth, as I said, they have layers of laterite stones. This is because of the previous experience, and then the imported materials. So these are the imported materials which was added to the architecture along with that. So teak from Burma, Italian marbles, and then the Belgian mirrors. And what you see is not a very new house. This has come up with 200 years before with the latest architectural detailing. The Slovakian cookware or the satin wood from Ceylon, chandeliers were from France, and they also, the cutlery were from was Chinese porcelain. And these are the cuisine which are very famous, and now it is helping them to raise the to be to help the women raise money also. And these are the various cultural practices. As I said, they have the system of celebrating festivals together. This is to keep the community intact. And these yearly festivals, wherever the community has migrated, they travel back to their native towns to celebrate these festivals together, which is helping them to keep the community intact. And this weddings are a very special practices over there. As I said, weddings are planned within the houses itself. And there is a system of this exchange of property only to the men in the family, whereas women's financial security is secured by means of the jewelry and all the dowry system or these type of things, which is displayed, and still it's prevailing in their community. And one other special is the ceremonial columns, which is being done together. And there is very immense importance of this in the Chettinad culture. One is the auspicious welcome for the prosperity, and this is also highlighting the matriarchal role. The women in the house will be dictating the other people of how to do the columns, and this is also the symbolic representation of the family cohesion. So people together sit and do the columns together. And the one other is, this is the celebration of
Madhumathi.
life.
Hi.
Okay.
We are really going over time, so
Okay,
please try to keep the details a bit more
sorry.
limited. Yes, thank you very
And
much.
these are the various handicrafts which are being done, and still which is being done. And I mentioned about this Athangudi tiles. And this is one cultural festival which is being done each year to recreate their culture tradition, and people from different countries travel here to experience their culture. So the next part will be covered by Professor Zahra.
Good evening, everyone. So thank you, Madhumathi ma'am, for introducing to the Chettinad community. You'll be sharing, yeah. So maximize. So technically, when we talk about residences, why are we talking about residential architecture to talk about a culture? Because we all believe that it is one of the like container of the cultural values, all the things that is reflected in the society that begins at home. So when we are seeing all this residential architecture, we are very much able to understand how it is the exact reflection of the society which was pertaining to that time. So and to understand the relation between this particular trading community and the influence or the connections or the parallels in the state of Malacca, we have to look into the different kind of theories related to the migration, because those theories are only going to guide whether we are looking into the research in the correct direction or not, or we are just overlooking things, or we are just maybe exaggerating some biases. So we have to understand it under the theoretical purview, and that's the reason why I'm bringing these theories now. So when we draw connections, we definitely are moving from different nations. So transnationalism theory is very crucial in that case. I'll not be reading all about the theories, but I'll just tell you the name of the theory and what it is going to contribute to this research. So from transnationalism, when we are not really talking about one nation, we are talking about the movement across the nations. We are ultimately will be talking much more about the commercial before we talk about anything in terms of intangible or tangible remittance or connections. So the major connection, the major remittance that comes here is the monetary, the commercial gains that are there from these trades. Then, as ma'am was talking about the living heritage theory, in living heritage theory, of course, the heritage that we see in Chettinad, it is very much living, because the traditions, the practices, the rituals are still being continued. Many of the stakeholders still come back, even if they are not living now anymore. They come back for certain rituals, certain times. And that is the parallel that we'll see in the state of Malacca, that is still happening. So even if they are living in Malacca and they have roots in Tamil Nadu, they will come for all the rituals and the practices ultimately to Tamil Nadu. So that idea of inclusion and integration comes from this living heritage theory. Then the next theory that I'm talking about is diaspora space theory, where the diaspora, the entire intersection is very important, because the art or the architecture that is being carried, or the cultural values that is being carried, that is meeting some point at some other context, and then it is evolving with that context. So this intersection is very crucial when we try and understand adaptations, or we try and understand the assimilations that we see. Then there is something called place, culture, and personal identity related theory, which is identity theory. So it is very tangible. We can see that this was there in the root, or the original state or original country, and that is being brought maybe with some addition, updation, or corrections. So this one is very tangible and very visible in architecture, art, and many of the other practices. Ritual transfer theory, which is context based. So they had this memory of those rituals, they had these ideas of these practices, but when they moved to a new context, they adapted according to the culture. So probably the festivals will be increased in number, or the way they are celebrating those festivals will eventually change. Ma'am. Second only. Next, yeah. So when we are talking about these interactions, there have been economic impact and there have been social and cultural impact. So there was, due to economic impact, there was a lot of wealth generation. There was investment, there was financial institutions, there was real estate, and then real estate affected that philanthropy. But all this was surrounded by the kind of cultural connections they already brought from the country from where they migrated. Next slide, ma'am. So when we are talking about trading, the trading itself had a lot of impact in terms of architecture, in terms of interiors, in terms of the way the entire community evolved. So when we are seeing these two pictures, these are really old pictures, some 1980s pictures, and they are the pictures of the commercial hubs of Malacca. So when the people from Chettinad, the traders, moved here, they didn't have a proper house as such, or the dwellings. So they had something like this, the second image that you can see, kitang, which is like downstairs on, or the lower ground floors, or the ground floors will have all the places of the commercial importance, all the offices, where not just one trade will be happening. So there will be a big hall, and then there will be small furnitures as they had in Chettinad, and these will be the trading points of multiple commerces. So multiple traders will be sitting and doing the commerce in the same building, same hall, and the above stories will be only used for the residential purposes, and they'll just be living, and only the male members of that society will be coming and doing the trade. That was the tradition for a long time, till the colonial system happened, and a lot of families also moved altogether here. So in the next picture, the first one was the commercial, because that had the most important influence in the entire change in the architecture that we see. This next adaptation that we see here is the residential. So the first image, which is a little blurry image, is 1947 Malacca House, which is not very distinguished from what we see in as a very indigenous house of Tamil Nadu. But eventually, when we now, or like in few years, we have seen in Kampang Chetty, which is the Chetty settlement, it has got a lot of influence from the local context in terms of materiality, in terms of the way they are doing their spatial arrangements also. But the essence of their community, like one of the major point that was established in the previous presentation, previous session, was that there was a need of Thenai they always believed in, because they moved from a tsunami based area. So that particular idea is still continuing, and that Thenai has multiple other spatial importance also, because it is a threshold area and they have to like sit, interact. It is a social component of the house. So here also they're using it, but here they are not really making a permanent furniture. Here they're using the temporary furnitures, but the plinth is higher and of the similar kind. Next one. Now, this is again one of the house from Kampang Chetty, where we can see all the influence, symbolic and architectural, like the Tinnai and the Chetty decoration. Chetty decoration is inside the house, or in the veranda area, and the Pataka and Dwaja, which are the symbolic celebration decor of the Chettinad, that is also being put here. Here in this case, the kolam is not really done with the rice powder. Here it is very much permanent. They're painting the same kolam patterns on all the roads. Next. The next house is a little peculiar and little important. So again, a very symbolic and important feature we can see here, which is the Tulsi Vrindavan or the Tulsi Mandir, which is placed here. But again, the entire top of the Tulsi Mandir, it is influenced from the Malaysian architecture. And the Thinnai, here it is little reduced, till the threshold space is there. In the next image, we can see there is a temple inside the house that is being built, and the rituals are being performed with these spaces. Next. Now, when we talk about the most important intangible aspect of these migrations, the faith is carried forward with all the people who are moving to these places. So with faith comes the religious spaces, and the religious spaces here were initially very different and very much basic or primary, we can call it. But the temples were pertaining to the deity that were being followed in Chettinad also. So the two temple that I'm showing, it's from 1960, Sri Angalaman Temple and Muddu Mariamman Temple. Next. No. This one has been preserved, and a lot of amalgamation of the different kinds of features that we see in again in Malaysia and India. We can see this. So the ground floor is very much evident from the Tamil Nadu style, while the above floors have a lot of motifs, colors and materiality. The entire idea of gold that is being put here with the motifs and the kanguras that is being made, that all influence comes from Malaysian architecture. And even in the interiors, a lot of glass as the material has been used for the decor, which is unlike what we see usually in the Chettinite temples. Next one. Now, the intangible context, we cannot, and as I was saying, that home is where the culture begins. So in case of Chettinad, the arrangement is larger, the courtyards are there, the houses are bigger, the scale is different. But the same kind of ritual is being done for the deities in the Chetty houses as well. So the kolam is made, which is a smaller scale, and the entire arrangement of the foods in the same manner and the same cuisine is being followed. This one is a Murugan temple, which is a very contemporary time temple of the same community. So now they have a lot of influences, direct influences in terms of color, material, everything that we can see. As we know that the travel is much easier, the influence is much global and very quick to adapt also. So it's just a click away probably to see what exactly a temple look like in Tamil Nadu and how to replicate it. But symbolically and ritually, they are also adding certain spaces which are very specific to that Chettinad community. So you can see on the right hand side image that particular pillar is always there in the Chettinad temple. Next one. Also, temple have been always a very important social structure. It has not just been a place to worship. So it is very crucial also to understand how the temple works in case of Chettinad and Chettiyar. So in case of Chettiyar, I'm giving an instance where in this community there is one temple, Murugan, and outside and around that temple, all the social structures, education related structures are very much visible. So there is a library, then there is a treasury, and the Gopuram, that is very much an architectural symbol of Tamil Nadu and Chettinad, that can be seen in this community as well. Next. So I'll conclude by saying that, which was, I'm quoting a British planter from 1900s who said, probably it is applicable also to many other migrant community. So hamlets became villages, villages became towns, and towns became cities, thanks to the Chettiyar businesses, because they, with the simple attire and a lot of enthusiasm, and that entire idea of commercial lending and all those, came here with the small setups. They brought a lot of community, and then now they are very much established in that context. And few more conclusive points, and then I'll end the presentation. So economic cultural integration model was very important because it all began with trade. So ultimately, the entire idea of doing the business with other people was not that easy. So they began with the lending idea. So they lent money a lot, and that made them a little more powerful in terms of economic generation. Adaptive heritage strategies. So they have adapted a lot of, they kept their core values intact, but they kept on innovate according to the context. Transnational cultural architecture, as we saw in the examples, and heritage sustainability, vulnerability, both were being considered, because it is a very vulnerable kind of a situation, since the community is now getting into the assimilation mode. So now the adaptation mode is converted into assimilation, and a lot of wedding, a lot of people from the community are moving out of the community and marrying and settling with other nations. So it's not a very heterogeneous kind of a group now anymore. So that assimilation is causing a challenge, but it is very much interesting to see how the assimilation actually ultimately evolves and finally gives us the final product. Thank you.
Thank you, Madhumathi and Zahra. I'm sure a lot of stuff there. I'm sure we'll build on it as we go along with the other two speakers. I want to move to the next speaker for today is Nirodha Dissanayake. Nirodha is just sort of finishing her PhD at the University of Adelaide and is now working with the city of Melbourne. I believe Nirodha is joining us from Melbourne today. And much of the work that I'm guessing she's going to discuss today was part of the PhD project, but it also extends a bit further to talk about the aspects of Sri Lankan fisherfolk who went to Gulf and then returned, and how that has impacted the remittance houses in Sri Lanka. So thank you, Nirodha. If you can share your screen, please.
Can all of you see my screen?
Yeah, we can see the screen. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Good evening, everyone. First, I'd like to thank the organizers of this session for giving me this opportunity, and thank you all for being here and listening. However, my presentation might be a little bit different from what Amit had said, but I let you listen and see. Today, I'd like to briefly share some insights from my PhD research, focusing particularly on the tsunami resettlement schemes in Sri Lanka. At the early stages of my fieldwork, I met with an architect, Mr. Sumangala Jayatilaka, who had played a key role in designing and managing housing projects in a number of tsunami-affected villages. He is widely respected for his work in social housing in Sri Lanka. During our conversation, he mentioned something that stayed with me. He said, "Look out for the big blue gates." According to him, these gates were unusually elaborate, almost out of place given the modest conditions of the houses behind them. He had never seen anything quite like it. That observation intrigued me. It became one of the many small but powerful questions that guided my fieldwork. Today, I'd like to share with you how I came to understand the meaning of these big blue gates and what significance they might hold for the families who live behind them. For my PhD, I explored major post-1977 settlement initiatives for low-income rural communities in Sri Lanka. The significance of 1997 is it's the year that economic liberalization has happened. As part of this, I examined post-tsunami resettlement schemes Villages established near original sites to house families displaced by the 2004 Boxing Day tsunami. My case study is Kayankani, a Tamil fishing village on the east coast. I chose it because eastern Tamil tsunami affected villages have received far less scholarly attention than southern Sinhala ones, likely due to restricted access during the civil war. Uh, So Kayankani was devastated by the 2004 tsunami but received limited aid due to civil war, remoteness, and minority status. Located in LTTE controlled territory at the time, it was hard to access and overlooked by many organizations. The said architect Sumangala Jayatilaka, commissioned by SOS, designed a new inland village layout with community input. The resettlement included houses, infrastructure, and public spaces. Residents, all interrelated, rely on small-scale fishing and struggle during off-seasons. Despite hardship, local and international NGOs supported the housing. The rebuilding process involved navigating complexities and consultations with villagers. In the aftermath of the 2004 tsunami disaster, the state's goal was to formalize the coastal landscape. These tsunami settlements marked a significant chapter in Sri Lanka's settlement narrative as they represented a couple of firsts. It was a state response to the emergency housing needs caused by a natural disaster, one that unexpectedly brought fishing communities to the forefront of national politics like never before. Although there had been a few major national housing projects previously implemented for regional communities, this was the first time a housing program was specifically designed for fishing communities who had historically been overlooked in the housing sector. So, in a way, through disaster, these communities found themselves in a moment of priority. Uh, these tsunami village establishment projects were overseen by state agencies, but due to the confusion at the time caused by the sheer scale of the work and the inefficiencies of the government bodies responsible, many local and international organizations, including private architects, got a chance to participate in a national housing initiative for the first time in Sri Lankan history. It was therefore a significant moment for the architecture profession in Sri Lanka. While the state gradually withdrew from direct construction responsibilities, its influence in public housing was reduced to the issuance of general guidelines. This created an opportunity for architecture professionals to reach deep into rural communities and work directly with them. They designed numerous housing schemes and experimented with innovative building typologies, responding to local needs in ways that were previously not possible within state led projects. However, the tsunami settlement process lacked a cohesive national framework. It became increasingly politicized, especially in relation to its treatment of minority communities, and has been widely criticized for overlooking their specific concerns. This is another reason I chose to study Kayankani, a minority Tamil village, as a key site in my research. In my broader PhD study, I argued that the settlement programs introduced after economic liberalization, drawing the rural periphery into the national economy, were, whether intentional or not, forms of social engineering implemented through architectural processes, particularly low to medium density housing schemes. Though through fieldwork and qualitative methods, I explored how these changes affected perceptions of home, identity, and social structure in village communities. I observed that economic diversification, moving beyond traditional vocational roles, was facilitated by state led planning and housing schemes, and this began to shift long held ideas about status, equity, and personal agency. These shifts played out most vividly in the domestic space. What stood out to me during field visits was how villagers began to see their homes not just as shelters, but as representations of themselves. Families became increasingly aware of the architecture of their houses as a marker of individual identity. Over time, their homes were modified, expanded, and decorated, reflecting both aspirations and a growing sense of ownership and pride. In the settlements I studied, I observed that ideas of wealth were expressed through small but meaningful upgrades, changes that might seem modest from a developed world perspective, but were deeply significant in the local context. For instance, moving from makeshift kitchens and outdoor bathing areas to tiled bathrooms or enclosed cooking spaces marked a real shift in quality of life and social positioning. As mentioned, one of the most visually striking features I encountered during fieldwork was the oversized gates that started appearing in front of otherwise simple houses. These gates were often disproportionately large and elaborately designed, clearly intended to make a statement. The Big Blue Gate, as it came to be known in my field notes in the tsunami settlements, became a recurring motif. It was a powerful symbol of aspiration, standing out against the dry, muted tones of the landscape, impossible to miss. In the images shown on the slide, the contrast between traditional and newly built gates is particularly striking. Where once simple fences marked household boundaries, new elaborate gates, often painted in vivid colors like blue, have emerged. These architectural elements, particularly gates, signify more than security or enclosure. They reflect a profound shift in how villagers view their homes, their social identity, and their place in an increasingly urbanized world. While walking through one such settlement, my translator pointed out that a family had constructed a large, visually imposing fence that's in the top right, but notably had not installed a door for their outdoor toilet. This juxtaposition is revealing. It suggests that certain symbolic aspects of architecture, such as fences and gates, now take precedence over practical needs. The gate, especially when elaborate, has become a powerful marker of status and aspiration. To the outsider, it might seem like an aesthetic mismatch or even a design flaw, but in the field, I began to understand that these gates were more than just physical barriers. They were metaphors, statements about crossing boundaries, achieving something, asserting a new kind of presence. They marked a shift from collective identity to personal individuation, and in that way, they reflected broader transformations within the community. In these resettled villages, architecture is no longer seen as merely utilitarian. The house and its components, gate, facade, size, and even color, have become statements of individuality and aspiration. The allocation of government owned land to tsunami affected communities gave even the poorest families a foothold in property ownership. This right to land has had transformative, transformative effects, setting off a chain reaction in social structure and personal identity. Ownership instills a sense of agency, and the ability to alter and improve one's home becomes a primary ambition. The house has evolved into a symbol of socio-economic standing. People invest labor, savings, and often remittances into incrementally modifying or enlarging their homes. These acts of building or upgrading are physical expressions of new wealth and shifting social dynamics. The big blue gate, seen in many homes, particularly in Kayankani, becomes a symbol of crossing both geographical and social boundaries. Though aesthetically jarring against the arid brown landscape, the gate's vividness demands attention. They don't blend in, they stand out, as do the families that installed them. Um, The transformation of tsunami resettlement villages can be observed through subtle but powerful changes in the built environment. These architectural changes, however small or symbolic, help me to understand how deeply intertwined the built environment is with everyday life, social structure, and the evolving aspirations of rural communities navigating economic change. In the broader thesis, I argued that remittance played a key role in the phenomenon of architecturally manifested individuation among village families. Following the introduction of the open economy, many rural women migrated to Gulf countries to earn money, contributing to household income and enhancing their homes with signs of luxury. However, the government, taking into consideration the damage done to families, children, and the broader social fabric, is now taking steps to limit the migration of women to the Gulf for unskilled employment. The tsunami settlement schemes in eastern Sri Lanka that I studied are relatively recent compared to other national scale initiatives. Furthermore, they have emerged in the aftermath of the civil war. These fishing communities are now more aspirational than ever, increasingly sending women overseas to generate income, mirroring a growing trend among rural communities across Sri Lanka. Finally, I salute the women folk in Ka and Kani as they are a strong and a united community. This was evident when they collectively pushed out microfinance agencies that had infiltrated and overwhelmed many other rural communities, particularly targeting women. However, how these tsunami settlements will harness the opportunity of remittance is yet to be seen. That is the end of my presentation. Maybe it's not like directly related to migration and remittance, but that's yet to be seen in the tsunami communities. Thank you.
Thanks, Nirodha. I think, yes, it's definitely connected. And what we are looking at is the broader impact of migration and the effects that they have. And the aim, of course, is that through the three presentations, we will share a whole range of examples that we can discuss later. So thank you for that. I would like to bring in our third speaker for the day, Dipti Shukla. So Dipti is working with the Manipal Academy of Higher Education, MAHE, which is an Indian university, but Dipti is originally based at the Dubai campus, which I think gives the basis for the work that she's doing, particularly looking at the relationship of Indian labor that goes from places like Kerala to the Gulf and the impact of these sort of Gulf houses in Kerala. So we'll hear a little bit more about that from Dipti. So thank you, Dipti, if you can share your screen.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Amit. The screen is visible?
Yes, it's visible. You can make it full screen. Yeah, thanks.
Okay, greetings, everyone. I'm Dipti Shukla. I'm working as the assistant professor at Manipal Academy of Higher Education, Dubai. And I'm currently pursuing my PhD from School of Planning and Architecture, New Delhi. And today I'll be talking about the research that I'm pursuing as part of my PhD, which is on the transnational migration and its influence on built environment, the phenomenon of transnational migration and the architecture of remittances, taking the case of Kerala Gulf Corridor. So the research identification mainly covers my broad area of interest and preliminary literature review. I'll try to cover most of it, but maybe I'll have to skip some of the slides because I think I'll exceed time otherwise. So moving on to the broad area of research, transnational migration. To give a bit of background, earlier in the initial part, I began understanding migration and different types, classification, and then I'm currently focusing on transnational migration, in which migrants keep very strong ties with the departure city by often sending money back in the form of remittances to support their families or return to visit them regularly. And the second important term which I'll be focusing on is remittances, which are usually understood as the money or goods that migrants send back to families and friends in origin countries, and are often the most direct and well-known links between migration and development. These two terms have been understood in the context of this research a little differently after conducting the literature review, and I'll be talking about it in the later slides. So moving on to the preliminary literature review. This is just a search results summary. And the literature review kind of helped me in identifying the emerging themes and research gaps and framing the research question through PICOT framework. And these are some emerging themes for future research from the literature review. The bottom highlighted ones are related to the architecture and built environment, and most of them will be covered as part of my research. So I'll just rush through some of the slides. So issues related to migrants and their impact on a city's built environment have been studied in the past, but there seems to be a gap in study about the spatial manifestations of their ties with the departure city. It's noteworthy that India ranks among the top 5 countries receiving remittances with a significant portion dedicated to housing. Surprisingly, there appears to be a dearth of research or documentation regarding the architectural outcomes stemming from these remittances. And these outcomes encompass not only money, but also involve the exchange and transfer of ideas, experiences, materials, labor, and more. I've previously mentioned about the definition of transnational migration, and within the scope of this research, it considers transnational labor migration as work-related mobility outside of an individual's country or origin. Common example would be in the Indian context of a migrant from Kerala who heads to the Gulf to work, but sends money back to his family in Kerala every month and visits them once a year. Coming to remittances, and also understanding that they can be of social nature, such as the ideas, behavior, identity, social capital, and knowledge that migrants acquire during their residence in another part of the country or abroad that can be transferred to communities of origin. While remittance is a financial concept, there are indirect impact on the architectural landscape, where a significant portion of the population works abroad, and there might be increased funds available for construction and infrastructure development, which could develop new buildings, homes, public facilities, influencing the architectural landscape of the region. The architecture is a reflection of the ties, that is, experiences, encounters, impressions, networks, aspirations, identities, and social status. And the architecture of a place is mainly represented or comes across through housing, since it dominates, and housing investments are generally made on individual houses due to aspirations that the migrants have, which have been observed in various cases or remittances around the world. So right now, I'll skip to the in-depth literature review, and proposal development will be taken ahead later. So coming to the in-depth literature review, which will kind of provide context justification to develop research framework and define the research questions. So India has been the largest source of international migrants for more than a century, and even the world's top receiver of remittances since 2010. Out of the 4 major migration from India, the Gulf cluster has the highest percentage, which is more than half of the total migrants from India. The state-wise breakup of international migration from within India reveals that Kerala has sent the highest number of migrant workers, and even remittances sent back to the state of Kerala are the highest. Looking at the figures from the state of Kerala, only 14% migrate outside of Middle East. The other major share of 96% migrate to the Middle East, such that every 4th Indian in the Gulf is a Malayali, and UAE tops the list with 8.3 lakh Kerala immigrants. Some more facts and figures reinforcing the Kerala migrant population in Gulf and the huge remittances sent district-wise based on KEMIS data. Now, remittances have affected Kerala in various ways, such as real estate and construction, which has the maximum share that goes into housing and investment. People living abroad have unintentionally influenced a specific style of architecture in Kerala, which is confusing in its designs and ideas. These designs often symbolize wealth and social status. It is needed to recognize, document, understand, and delve into the exotic architectural style of the houses, which stands out in a context deeply rooted in cultural traditions and religious beliefs of Kerala. These are just a few examples which show that this diaspora has evolved and perhaps unwittingly standardized a certain type of architecture that is not only bewildering in its stylistic constructs and propositions, but also pervasive in the way it has penetrated the various socio-cultural landscapes of Kerala, typecasting residential architecture as reflective of notions of economic wealth and social status, which also raises environmental, social, and economic issues. Many architectural projects are showcased on social media and promoted by TV channels, leading to the proliferation of similar designs. Surprisingly, there has been very less research conducted in this area. Now, this phenomena can only be identified when exchanges occur in large numbers within a concentrated area, especially in regions with a high prevalence of remittance-dependent households, where significant number of population works abroad in a specific region. This is a map showing the flight routes from UAE to India, and apart from the 3 metro cities like Delhi, Mumbai, and Bangalore, Kerala as a state has maximum traffic with 4 international airports and 3 more in the pipeline. The Kerala Migration Survey 2023 reveals that the North region had the highest share of immigrants, constituting 41.8% of the total immigrants. District-wide migration reveals that Malappuram has had the highest number of immigrants from 1998 to 2023. Notably, Tirur Taluka has considerably shown the highest number of immigrants in all the Kerala migration surveys conducted so far. When it comes to remittances by districts and households, remittances again, Malappuram district has the highest share. And Muslim households continue to receive the highest share of remittances, accounting for 40.1%, which are allocated to renovating houses or shops. This is happening owing to the special contact with Arabs in the northern region. So if you see the Muslim population, out of 100% as per the Kerala Migration Survey in 1998 versus 2023, Malappuram has the highest Muslim population. Since the Malabar region accounted for most of the laborers community-wise, Mapilas or Muslims of Kerala tend to migrate the most owing to their religious leniency towards the Gulf. Some regions, irrespective of administrative boundaries, tend to be more migratory. Like there's a belt stretching from Chirapulisari in the Palakkad to Nadapuram in Kozhikode, if you see the yellow patch. So many areas had started to root up all over the region, locally known as Gulf pockets. In these areas, around 60 to 90% of households had participated in a migration at one time or another. So in summary, the historical spice trade, Arab settlements, and cultural exchange have shaped the strong Arab-Muslim connections in North Kerala, making it distinct from the southern regions of the state. Also, while mapping the individualistic stylistic remittance villas based on secondary data, I found out that all of them lie in mostly north of Kerala, whereas apartment buildings can be found in the main cities like Kochi, Thrissur, and Trivandrum, and row houses and modern individualistic villas are spread across in all the districts. This is occurring partly due to the large number of immigrants from the region, and also because the Muslim population might find it easier to adapt to and incorporate Arab influences into their houses for religious reasons. Now, coming to the next part of the literature review, which is developing the research framework. So this is a brief overview of various theories and approaches that have been developed by scholars to understand and analyze architectural typologies and highlighted. Ones are morphological analysis, historical analysis, semiotics and symbolism, sociological analysis, sociocultural studies, phenomenology, critical regionalism, narrative architecture that will be addressed during the course of my research. And these are few notable authors which have also explored the intersection of identity, place, and architecture and have informed to formulate my research framework. Now, the effects of Gulf migration on the economy and society of Kerala. So I've divided into primary and secondary effects. So under primary, we have socio-cultural effects and economic effects. And secondary, we have technological and environmental effects, which kind of helped me to form the conceptual research framework, wherein remittances are in the form of money and goods, ideas and influences, aspirations, memory and experience, knowledge and skills. Leading to the primary factors under socio-cultural, we have culture, tradition, lifestyle, status, etc. Economic is profession, income, resources, affordability. Technological factors in terms of materials use, construction technology, labor availability. Environmental could be location, planning, efficiency, and conservation of resources. And these all lead towards influences which are seen in remittance houses in terms of connectivity, spatial sequencing, functional zoning, access patterns, planning and layout, scale and proportion, form and character, style and elements, material and technology, and facilities. Coming to the third part of refining the research question. So coming to the research hypothesis, diasporic architecture in the place of origin displays influences of the architectural elements of destination country as evidenced in the Kerala Gulf corridor would be my hypothesis. And the main research question is, in what ways does the architecture of the residential typology in the origin city gets affected owing to the remittances from the transnational migrants in the context of Kerala post the oil boom? Here's a summary slide of the 5 research objectives, sub-research questions, methodology, and theoretical framework for each of them. So I'll just read through this to analyze. The first objective is to analyze the influence of remittances from transnational migrants on residential architectural transformations in Kerala. The sub-research question is, how do remittance patterns shape housing design in Kerala post the Gulf oil boom? There'll be quantitative analysis of financial data, surveys with migrant families, and the interviews with architects, supported by transnationalism theory. Second objective is to examine the evolution of vernacular architectural styles in Kerala under the influence of migrant remittances. The sub-research question is, what changes in Kerala's traditional housing can be linked to migrant remittance-driven investments? Comparative architectural study would be conducted through site visits, historical records, and spatial mapping, supported by vernacular architecture theory. The third one is to explore the socio-cultural and emotional motivations behind architectural modifications by migrant families. How do migrants perceive and prioritize architectural features in their remittance-driven home? Interviews and ethnographic research with homeowners, architects, and community members would be conducted. This is supported by the place attachment theory. To analyze how global influence mix with local traditions in remittance-built residence is the fourth objective. And the sub-question is, to what extent does Gulf architectural influence integrate with Kerala's traditional style? There'll be case studies of houses with distinct Gulf-inspired features, expert interviews, and comparative analysis of construction material design, etc. This is supported by cultural hybridization theory. And the fifth one is to assess whether remittance-funded architecture symbolizes aspirational living or economic status in Kerala. The sub-question is, do remittance-driven housing transformations primarily reflect status, aspiration, or functional needs? This would be survey-based, assessing homeowners' perspective on luxury versus necessity and architectural choices, and supported by social aspirations framework. Coming to the methodology, so research paradigm is interpretivism. Research methodology will have qualitative case study method. Research approach is deductive. Research design is descriptive and exploratory. Sample designing is in interdisciplinary techniques that I'll be talking about later. The sample plan is qualitative analysis of data. Primary and secondary data would be collected. Simple textual or thematic analysis would be conducted. And there'll be validation and ethical consideration. So coming to the sampling, document analysis, unstructured interviews through purposive sampling, thick sociological descriptions, transact walking, participant observation, unstructured interviews through purposive sampling, thick sociological descriptions, visual architectural documentation, and content analysis would be conducted. Now coming to the stage that I'm currently on, that is data collection. So these are a few slides in terms of showing as to what is the vernacular style in both the regions and what is the current status of architecture in terms of the residential typology. So there's a study, comparative study of the broad history of residential architecture, starting from the pre-oil era till the 21st century. What was the kind of architecture and built environment in both the regions in terms of the residential architecture, the materials that were there, what changed post oil boom, and where does the Gulf migration kind of influence the architecture back in Kerala? So classification of the traditional residential architecture in Kerala, it's I've divided into three parts, that is region-based, north, central, south, religion-based, Hindu, Muslim, and Christian, and socio-economic status-based, that is clan, caste, and occupation. Coming to region-based, in the north and central Kerala, laterite masonry and wooden carpentry characterize Malabar style. The masonry allows huge and multi-storied buildings with intensive walled interiors and eclectic ornamentation. Southern or Travancore architecture tends to have moderate-sized courtyard houses, smaller inner yard with open layout interior space. It demonstrates very rich timber construction and overwhelming hipped gable and bent ridge roof architecture. The distinction between the two styles is not clear, but it's not clear-cut, but gradual from south to north. Now, these are some typologies which are religion-based. So in North Kerala, where it's mostly Muslim population, it is the Mapilla Manzil. Mapillas are basically people who have married Muslim Arab men who marry Muslim women in Kerala. They are known as Mapillas, and the community is started to be known by the common term as Mapilla. So the house is known as Mapilla Manzil. Then in the central Kerala, it's the Syrian Christian Kwekettu, and in the south Kerala, it's Nambutiri Zilam. There are distinct characteristics for each of these houses. I'll not get into the details right now. And then there is the third category, which is on socio-economic status based, wherein I'm talking about the different castes in the clan, the Nayars, the Brahmin or Namudaris, which are on the topmost, and the royal family, Paryachairamen, artisans, and temple servants. And each of them have a different style of house. Coming to the typomorphological map of traditional vernacular spaces in Kerala. So there's a traditional hut type, then there are salas. In terms of Eksala, Dvisala, Trisala, Chatushala, this basically means number of rooms. Then there's Narakettu, Ettukettu, and Patanjali Kettu. Kettu is basically for courtyard house. Narakettu is single courtyard, then Ettukettu is double, and then Patanjali Kettu has 4 courtyards. These are different elements of the traditional typology of the houses in Kerala. I will right now not get into the details of each of them, but just to this is going to be the focus of my research, which is based in North Kerala, which has Muslim Mapila population, and they have a modified Narukettu Mapila Manzil house. So what is a Mapila Manzil? It is a major Muslim community which practices matrilinear kinship, and they call their house a manzil. And kitchen and female spaces in these houses are in auspicious places inside the house with small courtyards, and the front veranda is for the male spaces. Now, this is also a detailed study about the Mapilas and what was the evolution of their houses as per the timeline. Moving on to the next part, that is the typomorphological map of vernacular and contemporary residential typology in UAE. So the pre-oil boom, their local residence was typically Bedouin layout and spatial arrangements. Then pre-oil boom, it was the rich merchants, which had typical courtyard houses. This is an example from Al-Bastakia. Then post-oil boom, modern individual houses were planned. A typical 1974 plan illustrating the dirty kitchen and the majlis that is accessible from its own entrance. And post-oil boom, this eclectic villas that are now seen all over the landscape. So a typical plan from 2000, the kitchen is inside the villa with service access from the rear of the house, and the majlis has a separate entrance from the fore. These are traditional architectural features of a Middle Eastern house. We have Livan, Mashrabia, Barjil, courtyards, and majlis. And the current villa architecture in UAE, so we have traditional Emirati villas, we have Mediterranean villas, contemporary modern villas, Islamic inspired villas. So UAE boasts a diverse array of individual villa styles reflecting the country's rich cultural heritage, economic growth, and modernization. And here are some prominent styles, followed by Spanish villas, eco-friendly and sustainable villas, luxury villas, and fusion villas. Examples of communities and developments featuring diverse villa styles. So there's Emirates Hills, Palm Jumeirah, Al Barari, and Arabian Ranches. They offer themed communities. Now, the status of current housing in Kerala. So how designs made in the Middle East, such as the first one, if you see, is made in Riyadh, Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. They are executed in Kerala. And features of a Gulf house, such as a majlis or a barjil, become a common feature in the Kerala Gulf house. So majlis is something which is an Arabic house feature, which starts to show up in a Kerala house. And these are the barjils, which are wind towers, which you would commonly see in a Middle Eastern home. And then there are advertisements of Gulf houses or Arabian model houses, with lavish interiors inspired from the Arabic styles. This is one of the villas. I'll just run through this. This is Uber Villa in Pune, Malappuram, Kerala, which I happened to visit and take interview. So these are some of the features: Arabic and colonial architectural concepts, separate family seating space for ladies, Portugal roof style, Arabic style balcony, Italian marble, Belgium exported lighting. The client is settled in Oman for the past 45 years. So Arabic and colonial concept was used as the client has lived in the Gulf for a long and wanted that touch. The owner says that they visit the house during their 2-month vacation when their other relatives also join them. Elevation is a fusion of Arabic and colonial architecture, emergence of classic architecture, essence of royal interiors and pleasing landscape with stylistic aspects. A luxurious wide living room with 2 stairs and 1 elevator placed on dazzling, unique chandelier blending with interiors for a welcoming feel. Separate family sitting is arranged for ladies with lavish interiors. And one can visualize a broad scene through from first floor to ground floor, dining room having alternative light sources, furnished with large dining table and chairs and prayer room, sketched the highlights of the wall and Arabic mashrabiyah design. So the next steps for me is I'm working on survey forms. Form 1 would be for the Kerala residents, returnees, families, neighbors. Form 2 would be for Gulf expats with roots in Kerala, and Form 3 is for experts, architects, and academics. This is one of the forms that I've sort of worked on. Coming to the expected outcomes, research results and discoveries will play a vital role in enhancing our comprehension of how remittances and transnational movements impact the built environment of the city of origin. Results will add value to comparative research on remittance-driven architecture in various regions and nations. The findings help in understanding what changes and what are the non-negotiables when it comes to the architectural transformation of a house. Additionally, they assist in identifying any underlying patterns for such transformation if they exist. Classification of architectural components and elements that experience alterations, and contribution of a small glossary of elements of vocabulary that will add value to comparative research on remittance-driven architecture in various regions and nations. Something on the lines of Punjabi Baroque by Gautam Bhatia. Yeah, so that's it from my side. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Dipti, for that. There's so much material there already. So we're very sort of hopeful about the outcomes of this research, and we look forward to following. So lots of great examples there, and I think, you know, it connects back very interestingly to some of the examples that we saw with the first presentation, and brings it a full circle. Unfortunately, we've gone over a lot of time, so hopefully we'll still have opportunities for some discussion, but we'll have to keep it sort of focused. So what I will do is I will invite Peter Scriber to have a sort of first response and sort of initiate some kind of initial question and discussion. In the meanwhile, for everybody else, if you've got any questions, please put it down in the chat or raise your hand and we will call upon you to speak. But yeah, please do that quickly so that we can get the conversation going. Thank you. Peter, if you can provide a quick response. Yeah.
Okay, well, thank you, Amit, for giving me the floor. And thank you all 3 speakers for some really fascinating material. And yes, a great feast of material that we'll try to digest quickly here. I think Amit tipped at the comment, kind of overarching comment that really occurred to me as we got into the details of Dipti's presentation, and to seeing the transfer of wealth, and particularly that analysis of course it's all about money, or at least remittance begins with a financial question, and as we saw in the first presentation, business was the basis of this community becoming quite exceptional, the Chettiyars on the east coast of India and their relationship to this wider world. And in Nirodha's presentation in the middle, in a much more humble case, literally sandwiched between these 2 other more powerful and sort of accomplished or developed economic arguments for massive impact of wealth transfer on these impressive architectures that we saw in those 2 cases, in the beginnings of an aspiration towards a more impressive architecture than literally the humble shelters on the beach of the fisher folk before the disaster and before the shift into an economy which is changing their lives. We see the beginnings of this change. So I guess my question to the speakers to think about a little bit more for us is something that Zahra tipped on in the at the end of the first presentation, when you began to look at what you're observing in the Malacca case with the really the quite significant architectural evidence of change. What, to my eyes, was a much more modest sort of scale of architecture, but also you use particularly that observation that there was a process of assimilation and change sort of happening almost away from the culture, as I was reading it, that was so emphatically strong and distinctive on home soil in the Chettiyar community in India. And so what is the using architecture as our method to look at these cultural and economic changes, or these economically driven cultural changes and relationships with these larger worlds, are we seeing this assimilation and sort of homogenization, what, in a word everywhere else we talk about as globalization, simply showing us through the evidence of architecture that we're losing touch with the specificity of culture? Or is the case of the Chettiyar community, for instance, on the east coast of India, or the Kerala community on the west coast of India, do we see, in fact, how the architecture, when we look closely at it, is talking about the possibility of holding on to some sort of constructed distinction in spite of this remarkably connected world that we are living in pretty much everywhere in the 21st century, but historically have been living in for some time in at least two of these cases, if not all of them. So so I guess the question is around that what are we observing in these architectures? Is it about homogenization and loss of character, or is it about the constructing and the renewing and the evolution of cultures which remain distinct somehow? Does anyone want to come back in on that topic? Maybe I would invite Madhumathi to have another contribution to the discussion.
Yeah. Good evening, sir. I would actually begin to answer this particular question with a case example, which is not touched in this case because the context was different and the trading routes were different. I'll give you an example from Sidhpur, which is on which I have also done few papers on. Because in that case, again, the similar kind of trading was happening, and that city entirely was based on the trading community itself. So the core of the city is designed, owned by these traders, and they have a lot of Victorian influence on those architecture. But there is a detachment which happened due to various reasons, with age, with generations, the detachment happened. So ultimately there is an abandonment, and now we are losing a lot of rich heritage which we could have retained, or we could have conserved in some manner. So if we compare that to the present state of Chettinad, there's still people who are there. So if there is complete detachment in the generation which are present generation or in the future generation, then it is very difficult to ultimately conserve anything or preserve any of such heritage, which is very much related to identities. So those intangible aspects that we talked about, the rituals and everything, that is about the people. So if the people are not there anymore, the conservation of that particular architecture will have no meaning. So definitely everything is about ultimately about the people. So if we are not saying that one has to come back from the destination country, or they have to settle back, but how can we have a balance between the two, losing what we had here and living up to their own future expectations? So that balance, attaining that balance, and architectural purview, if you look at how to conserve everything and still not really stuck to a particular era also. If it really needs to evolve, eventually it will evolve. We cannot really hold to something just because it is an old thing. We really have to find the values which are imbibed in it. If the value is related to people and people are no more there, it's abandoned, then we have to really question that fact also, whether how much conservation is also will be required in that case. That's what I would like to add.
Thank you.
I would also add to this point. Actually, what they have done is there are two types of heritage, tangible and intangible. So all this customs, tradition, which are the intangible heritage, they have kept it intact so that the people have to come back for their villages to certain activities. So they will have to retain their old houses. That is how the system itself is developed to conserve the houses what they have here. So most of them, they for many ceremonies, they come back here. At least in 1 year, they come 1 or 2 times, and the major festivals happen at their home. If you see the marriage ceremony, they in whichever part of the world they are, they do the ceremony within their house only. And now it's because of the patriarchal system, the house has been divided to too many families, but still the families who share it have to do their ceremonies only in the house. So this intangible heritage is helping them to conserve the tangible heritage.
I wonder if I could just ask Dipti if the interviews you've begun to do in northern Kerala with those large, newly built homes, which you say they come to for a month or so a year, and they bring other parts of the family from Bangalore and other to come and join them and such. Is there aspects of what we've just heard about in Chettiyar, where sort of adherence to tradition and performance of ritual is particularly important during those residencies?
Actually, the houses in Kerala, these Gulf houses, so to say, in Kerala, are a status symbol. So, in fact, in some of my interviews, I have come to know that, like, for example, some of our students here, when they are getting or about to get married, their fathers first build the house, the dream house, the Gulf house, and then the girl gets married. So it is some sort of status symbol in which they say that, okay, now they are staying in the Gulf and there's money coming in, and now they have built a huge house and it is now for the ceremony to happen. So yes, that way the family also bonds and comes together, and so yeah, that's there. But to add to Madhumathi's point earlier, I would like to bring up a quote I read from Gautam Bhatia's book, where he talks about style becoming the tool to announce a new social class. But it is rarely rooted in the spatial or cultural logic. So he critiques how economic success plus lack of architectural guidance leads to exaggerated, misplaced ornamentation or borrowed styles that are stripped of meaning in their new context. There are decorated sheds, buildings where decoration is pasted on, not integrated. And something similar happens in the Gulf House also, which becomes a spectacle for social mobility. Not a thoughtful architectural response to place, just a visual features are imported, but meanings and functions are lost or altered. And it's a climatically unsuited structure, so to say.
Thank you. Nirodha, did you have any further thoughts about what you shared with us in light of anything that's been said?
Yes, I think actually my research is based on like more of a social kind of housing and public kind of housing settlements. So when I think about the broader PhD, I actually touched on the remittance housing, actually the migrant workers housing in other resettlement projects. However, not they are all like from like very humble scale, like very who the migrants workers were women, mostly women going for domestic work, unskilled domestic work. So it's kind of even social upgrade for them, and a path for social identity. Yeah, so but it's in a very small scale, like very social, like broad social scale.
But I thought that the intimacy, the humbleness relative to some of these positively palatial houses we've seen in these other contexts was revealing, in that even at that scale, these small features, like the gate you used as a sort of symbolic feature to begin with, but then even looking at the choices in interior decoration, the small features that, and just that you made that point very clearly, that yes, the significance, the meaning of the feature rather than the utility of it, the function was quite marked and quite conscious in many cases, that this was becoming so important. So I think that for me sounds like an illustration of the point Dipti was just making, but emerging in another context, but very, very much connected with this ocean rim we're talking about, which historically and in the present is sort of enabling these rather dramatic economic changes. So I'll stop commenting here, because I know that we've reached the official kind of limit of time, but Ahmad's been watching the chat, and he may well want to bring in some other questions before we actually put. So thanks again from me for the wonderful presentations, and over to you, Ahmad. Ahmed?
Sorry, I was on mute. So I was just sort of saying there is not a lot in the chat. There was a question from Anthony Waku, but I think Madhumati's answered it in the text, which was mostly to do with the sort of geographical spread of the Chettiyar community. So anybody who's interested in that could look at Madhumati's answer, or I could read it out, which says, in India, there's 78 villages which are now with ancestral homes, and the migration has happened to all metro cities in Tamil Nadu, but the major migrant community has settled in Asian countries with the same business. The younger generation into the IT sector are in the US, and the studies with the University Technology Malaysia is producing further information on this. So, of course, we can hear more about that in the future. I did have an observation. I don't know if it's really a question, which I thought kind of might be a good thing to think about, stitching the three things together. I think in the beginning, we talked about the importance of residential architecture as a way to understand cultural influences or cultural impact. And the question of domesticity, of course, comes through quite a bit. So how the nature of domesticity changes. But one thing I found very interesting was, of course, in Nirodha's case, there was this idea that it leads to greater individuation. And on the other ones, we are actually talking about the Chettiyar community or something. So as a community reflection. So with the blends that are happening, which might be stylistic or aspirational, are we also seeing a change in the nature of the domestic context and how people are representing an individual identity versus a community identity? Is there some sort of shift or impact of these remittance processes on that nature of domesticity? So I don't know. I think maybe I'll start with directing it to Dipti and sort of saying that, of course, I would imagine there's a lot of individuation that is happening there because of the stuff that we see in the Gulf context. But how are things in Kerala? Is that something that we see where people are flaunting their individual wealth and what they have received from the Gulf, or is that going back into representing and supporting some kind of community identity?
I think it is more towards the expression of individualistic style and expressions that they've gathered from memories and experiences from the Gulf, and showing all the money earned as a status symbol. So there's an observation that if you see in the castes that are there, even there's a tiff between that, there's a social rift, if you see, because a lower caste person earning a lot of money and building a huge house next to a person who's of a higher caste, but maybe not travel to the Gulf and maybe has a humble house. So there's sort of a rift also, which is there. So I would say that there's nothing like a community sort of values which are taken for building their house, but individualistic styles and expressions are taking a shape.
So yeah, and that would be something that I would have assumed looking at that sort of output. But I would just then sort of move to Madhumathi and Zahra and then ask that how is that in the Chettiyar community? Then how are they maintaining community identity over sort of being swept away in this sort of individuation of, display of individual wealth, that it was, my family has gone and brought this wealth versus, it's a Chettiyar community. Are you seeing much of that? Yeah.
In India, it's happening in two ways. There's a clear distinction. If you see the architectural style of the house itself, it's the influence of the trading with the other countries. So they would have brought the materials. By looking at the house itself, you will know the country they are doing the trading. But they had an equal balance because Chettiyars are known for their philanthropic activities also. So they distribute the money for the individual self as well as for the other activities like developing the institutions. If you see, there are many institutions that are developed all over Tamil Nadu by the Chettiars itself. And apart from that, they spend on the development as well as the infrastructure activities of their own villages. And they also spend so much for the festivals and for the management of the temples also. If you see, each village, the center will be a temple and they belong to that particular temple. So whatever the money they bring in, and the same culture is being followed in Malaysia also. It's because we had visited Penang, and if you see, Zara showed that Kitangi system where the people share the workspaces. No, if you see the sort of the workspaces is still followed, and we were wondering Chettiars were the people who developed the co-working spaces 200 years before. Still, now we are still researching on the co-working spaces. So each of the Kitangi used to manage a temple, and if there are 10 businesses that is going on, they distribute certain amount of their monthly income for taking care of the temple in Malaysia also. And they have one other system is each month one of the business owner used to take care of the temple, and they have another system. It's like the temple has lot of ornaments and everything for the god, and they have a system of exhibiting it by means of a festival, which is a system showing that I'm taking care of it, and it's like it's submission of our account in a very intangible way by celebrating a festival also.
So I think that's really, really fantastic that, in that bit of India, you're not really that far apart, but you're on the east and the west coast, and the communities have very different approaches to the wealth that is coming out of these trades. I know we are quite tight on time, but I will sort of ask Nirodha also to comment on that. And I thought it, of course, when you think about it, it seems like the individuation versus community seems to be one might be considered better than the other. But I also found in Nirodha's case that individuation also seems to empower women particularly. I think I remember you said that. So yes, it's not just an individuation in the sense of being disassociated from the community that you are a part of, but it's also allowing for women to find a different kind of identity or support. So I just want to have a short comment from you, Nirodha, about how is that seen, that kind of individuation that you're forming, but allowing then for women to represent themselves differently in the community. How is that perceived? And also as a researcher, how that's perceived, but also how is that perceived within the community?
Yes, actually, yeah. So what I could observe in the community is that because of these resettlement efforts and because of these open economic um, policies that were imposed by the state on these regional population, the regional communities, the people were empowered, mostly the women. Women had an opportunity to come out of their houses to go abroad, like to go beyond the borders, even not only from the house, from even for overseas as well, to reach Gulf and bring wealth and contribute on their household income, and also to express their wealth as well, so that empowered women particularly, and it also gave them much more and a type of agency and power, or the power within the community and within the family and the community as well. So I think yeah, that change, social transformation was important, while there were some like you know uh, implications like social disturbing social structure kind of things, but then they had these positive kind of implications as well.
Great. Thank you so much, Nirodha. I know we are well over time, so and there are not any other questions in the chat, so I would like to bring this session to an end. But thank you very much to all the speakers for sort of sharing the work. And I know this is all work in progress, and there's so much more that needs to happen. And we hope that we'll be able to bring you back at a later stage to share your work as it progresses. And of course, hopefully you will keep joining other aspects of the PATIO community. I'm sure, the idea or the broader theme of migration, remittances, and cultural sort of exchange is going to be very central to the idea of the Indian Ocean Rim and the exchanges that we're talking about. So we will have lots of other discussions that will be very pertinent to the research you're doing. So thank you very much for that. With that, I will thank also Peter for his question, and for everybody who stayed this late for the session. And we will see you next month, and we'll send out the details on that very soon. So thank you, everybody, and good night. Yeah. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.